Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International.
Authorities in the Indonesian province of Bali say that they have arrested a 23-year-old suspect this week after he allegedly stole nearly 24 motorbikes to fund an addiction to online gambling. According to reports, between January and March of this year, Putu Panarma allegedly stole 21 motorbikes in the city of Denpasar. The vehicles were allegedly stolen from various areas across the city, and almost all were stolen under the cover of darkness. Purnama was reportedly able to easily steal the bikes because he taught himself how to make fake keys for them, meaning he could simply walk up to them, start them, and drive off. Upon returning to his home, Purnama would list the stolen vehicles for ridiculously low prices on Facebook Marketplace, where they sold almost immediately. Reports allege that he would generally list the bikes between 1.2 and 1.5 million Indonesian rupiah, or roughly $85 to $100 US. Police say that almost all of the money that Purnama made from the thefts was funneled into online slot games, which he was reportedly addicted to. While it's not exactly clear from reports how police finally caught Purnama, sources we came across allege that his suspicious pricing on Facebook Marketplace might have had something to do with it. At the time authorities arrested Purnama, 8 motorbikes were found in his possession, and he was shot in the leg while trying to escape. At the time of this recording, police say that they're trying to track down the remainder of the stolen vehicles.
Authorities in the Australian state of New South Wales say that they have arrested a 25-year-old bus driver this week after he was accused of letting a teenager drive his bus on several different occasions while there were passengers on board. According to reports, between March 10th and the 27th, 25-year-old Adam Stevens allegedly allowed a 16-year-old boy to take the wheel of his bus numerous times while he was on the job and driving for a public transit company in the Sydney suburb of Campsie. The circumstances came to light when the bizarre situation was recently reported to police. Stevens was arrested at his home in Menai at around 2 p.m. on March 30th and has now been charged with negligently moving or driving a vehicle and subjecting persons to risk. He has also been temporarily suspended from his job while an investigation continues. At the time of this recording, it's unclear why Stevens allowed the teenager to drive his bus, let alone why it allegedly happened on multiple occasions.
Representatives from London's Metropolitan Police Department say that they've arrested a 40-year-old man this week after a mother of 2 was found stabbed to death in her apartment after failing to pick up her kids from school. According to reports, the incident began on the afternoon of March 24th when teachers at a local primary school in the East End area of Bethnal Green discovered that 40-year-old Yasmin Begum had not picked up her 2 young boys. This was completely unlike her, and the family's apartment was just a short walk away, so immediately the teachers became concerned enough to contact the police. When officers arrived, they went to Yasmin's apartment accompanied by 2 of the teachers but were unable to get an answer when they knocked. It was at that point that they broke the door down. Once inside, police discovered that the 40-year-old mother had been brutally stabbed multiple times. Sadly, she was pronounced dead at the scene. 3 days after the terrible crime, investigators arrested a 40-year-old man named Clem Mia in connection with the case. Mia has since been charged with Yasmin's murder, as well as burglary and 2 counts of fraud by false representation. At the time of this recording, much of the circumstances surrounding Yasmin's death have not been released to the public. It's unclear what evidence police have against Mia, or whether or not he had any connection to Yasmin prior to her death. At the present time, police are asking anyone with information about the case to reach out with anything they might know. Those with information have been asked to contact the Metropolitan Police or Crime Stoppers.
Authorities in Nigeria say that at least 7 people are dead this week and dozens of others are wounded following a terrifying attack on a passenger train. According to reports, the incident took place on the evening of March 28th as the train was traveling from the Nigerian capital of Abuja to the city of Kaduna in the country's north. Roughly 55 miles into the journey, as the train neared the village of Katari, a section of track was blown up by unknown gunmen, causing the train to derail. After that, the gunmen allegedly opened fire on those inside. Those that were able reportedly fled the train and ran for their lives into the surrounding forests, though many others could not and were forced to get as close to the floor as possible to try and avoid the gunfire. The country's military eventually arrived and were able to take control of the situation, though some allege that they were not able to get to the scene until almost an hour into the attack. Though several days have now passed since the incident, at the time of this recording the situation on the ground remains chaotic, and accurate information about the attack is hard to find. As a result, only estimates have been released about many details of the case. It's believed that as many as 1,000 people were aboard the train at the time the attack took place, and that at least 7 people were killed as a result of the violence. However, reports currently contradict each other about whether the deceased victims were exclusively passengers or whether some were staff and security personnel working on the train. According to reports, at least 22 people have been treated for injuries as a result of the attack, though that number could be higher. An unknown amount of people are also feared to have been kidnapped by the gunman behind the incident. While no group has claimed responsibility for the train attack at the time of this recording, authorities believe that the culprits are likely a group of armed bandits involved in kidnapping for ransom. If you're a regular viewer of our Crimes of the Week International series, then you're likely aware that these kinds of crimes have become increasingly common in northern Nigeria over the past few years, especially on the highly traveled Abuja-Kaduna highway. However, this week's attack is particularly noteworthy because it happened along the train route between the cities, which is generally viewed as a safer alternative to taking the highway because of the presence of armed guards aboard trains. Apparently, this week's attack, though not entirely unprecedented, is still the most significant one to happen on the railway line since it began operating in 2016. At the time of this recording, the situation is still under investigation.
Authorities in the Australian state of New South Wales say that 3 men are in custody this week after they were linked to the suspected murder of a 24-year-old Malaysian man who is believed to have been killed more than a year ago. According to reports, 24-year-old Chong Kai Wong, who went by the name Jackie, moved to Sydney in 2016. Though he originally came to Australia on a holiday visa, police say that sometime after arriving in the country he began working for a Southeast Asian crime group that was involved in the illegal growth and sale of marijuana. It's believed that Jackie worked for the group as a so-called crop sitter, a person in charge of monitoring the plants grown as part of the illicit operation. However, shortly after Christmas of 2020, the 24-year-old disappeared. Police now suspect that Jackie was murdered by members of the criminal group sometime between Christmas and January 8th of 2021. While few details about the crime have been released at the time of this recording, police say that they have now arrested 3 men in connection with the alleged killing. A 33-year-old man was taken into custody last week at a property in the west of Sydney, while a 22-year-old man and a 28-year-old man were arrested in different suburbs of the city on March 29th. All 3 men are now facing numerous charges, including murder and other offenses related to the cultivation and supply of illegal drugs. On the same day that the 2 men in their 20s were arrested, police also began a detailed search of a rural property in Keelong, Buttock. At the time of this recording, nothing has been found, though authorities are hoping that the search will lead to the recovery of Jackie's remains. The situation is under investigation.
Authorities in the Thai province of Chonburi say that they are investigating an alleged stabbing incident that left 1 man hospitalized this week, after he and another factory worker got into a knife fight over who was the harder worker. According to reports, the incident began at approximately 1 p.m. on March 27th, when police were called to a residence in the Muang Chonburi district in Nong Kengkok. When officers arrived at the scene, they found 2 men, both of whom were clearly drunk and injured. One of the men, later identified as 48-year-old Mongkorn Pongnu, had been stabbed and needed to be taken to the hospital. The second man, 39-year-old Thaksin Chalardlut, said he had acted in self-defense, but was taken into custody for questioning. Since neither man could offer a reliable version of the day's events because of their level of intoxication, police turned to a neighbor of the injured 48-year-old man, who had been the one who called police in the first place. The neighbor informed police that the 2 factory workers had been drinking all day. However, things had turned violent when they began to argue about who was the harder worker. At the time of this recording, it appears that Chalardlut remains in police custody over the stabbing incident, though no charges have yet been filed while police continue their investigation. One Thai news source we came across also jokingly added that police have so far been unable to determine who of the two men was the harder worker.
Authorities in the Mexican state of Michoacan say that 20 people are dead this week after gunmen opened fire on a crowd attending an illegal rooster fight. According to reports, the incident took place at 10:30 p.m. on March 27th when a crowd of people were attending an illegal rooster fight being held at a ranch in the town of Las Tinas. It began when a group of suspected cartel members dressed in camouflage burst out of a snack food truck and began to fire indiscriminately at everyone inside. The gunmen then escaped in vehicles that were already at the scene, leaving the food truck behind. When police arrived at the scene, 19 people were pronounced dead, while several others were rushed to the hospital. One other person died on the way there. Among the dead were 17 men and 3 women, including the 59-year-old owner of the ranch and his son. At the time of this recording, authorities say they believe that unidentified cartel members are behind the deadly incident and that the crime was likely the result of fighting between rival groups. According to police, the truck that was used in the attack was reported stolen sometime last week. At the time of this recording, several victims of this week's attack are still recovering in the hospital, including at least one American woman who was on vacation with her sister in Michoacan. The woman remains in critical condition, while her sister, a mother of 4, was one of the 20 deceased victims.
Authorities in the Colombian department of Valle de Cauca say that they are holding a 17-year-old girl in custody this week after she confessed to being involved in the truly heinous murder of her 13-year-old friend. According to reports, the case began at around 4 p.m. on March 22nd, when 13-year-old Mary Luna Giraldo went to visit her 17-year-old friend in the town of Encerme Nuevo. It would be the last time she was ever seen alive. A massive search effort was quickly organized to find Mary Luna, and at the beginning, hopes were high that she would be found safe. However, at some point, the 17-year-old friend she had been hanging out with the day of her disappearance turned herself into police, telling them that the teenager was dead. Based on information that the 17-year-old provided, investigators were able to locate Mary Luna's remains on the banks of the Rio Cauca. According to reports, she had been beaten, shot, and tied down with a 30 to 40-pound weight. Despite admitting to her alleged involvement in the crime, the 17-year-old claimed that she was not the mastermind behind it. Instead, she reportedly provided police with the names of 3 other people who she said carried out the actual murder. Neither the 17-year-old's name nor the names of the other alleged perpetrators have been released at the time of this recording. According to local media reports, Mary Luna dropped out of school a couple of months before her murder, and had only recently started hanging around with her new 17-year-old supposed friend. The two had apparently spent a great deal of time together in the 15 days leading up to the crime. At the time of this recording, the motive behind the terrible murder is unknown. The 17-year-old suspect remains in police custody. That brings us to the end of this edition of Crimes of the Week International. If you're a fan of the new series, don't forget to tell us in the comment section below. While you're there, make sure to subscribe to Crime Zone for more true crime content like this, making sure to hit the notification bell to stay up to date with our latest videos. Thank you for watching.